Welcome everybody. Lowe's Not Podcast. Today's special guest we got Dirk Manning and special co-host Dead Guy.
No, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate both. It's good seeing both of you. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir. Good seeing you again.
I know it's been a minute, man. There's been a lot shaking. Been a lot shaking.
For sure. It's been like 7 months. I think you were on last, something like that.
Yeah.
7-8 months ago.
Oh my God. And it seems like such a short time, but such a long time at the same time because of just the magnitude of the series of events that have brought us to reconnecting here today. So again, thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you as well. Yeah, Lowe's and Loud just turned 1 this month, so we met our 1 year mark.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a job, man. You keep going like this.
Well, hopefully one day.
Yes, sir.
But so, what's new in your neck of the woods?
Well, we might as well not bury the lead, right? I know a lot of your people and stuff know me as, a comic book writer and things like that, graphic novelist. And while I still am a comic book writer, graphic novelist, I will be continuing to be the case for quite some time. Got a lot of new books lined up and stuff. I know we'll be talking about that at a different time. But I'm excited and humbled and still kind of blown away to also be talking to you, as my little header down here says. I am now also the publisher at SourcePoint Press.
That's dope. Congratulations on that, buddy.
Thank you. I worked myself right into a job I never aspired to get, is what happened. But
yeah, I was just going to ask you if that was something you were going for, or it just happened to fall in your lap.
Not at all. Truthfully, it fell in my lap more than anything. The way things kind of worked out, a lot of people are, familiar with SourcePoint Press, and they've been rolling for over 10 years now and things like that. Comic industry has changed a lot in the last couple of years. Paper shortages and all kinds of stuff, and SourcePoint really evolved as a publisher too, and they started getting more into like licensed IP from creators and things like that. And it just got to the point that there was talk about from the leaders of the company at the time to kind of sunset the company. And I said, no, don't do that. I said, look, the key is to take SourcePoint Press back to the roots, go back to creator-owned graphic novels. And I laid out this big agenda about how, you can do creator-owned graphic novels and creator-driven books and things like that. Laid out this big spiel to the old leadership. And Travis McIntyre was in charge, and he hears me make this big impassioned speech, and he just goes like this, stroking his big ugly red beard, and he just goes, "So why don't you do it?" And at that point, I was stuck. Right? I just talked about how cool it would be and all these things that could get done, and then lo and behold, I found myself in the position about, well, here I just laid out how good this idea was. And if he was volleying it back to me and saying, then do it. Well, guess what? Here I now sit. So I had two kind of conditions I wanted met, and again, I mean, we're all friends here. I'm just going to be real transparent. One of them, as I said, is if I'm going to be in charge, I need to be in charge. I need to be able to drive the ship. Every ship needs a captain, and I said I need to be captain.
Yes.
The other thing I said was
everything your way.
well, right, and that's exactly it, man. That's no disrespect to anyone else, but there's a time for committee and there's a time not for committee, right? And I said at the end of the day, the buck's got to stop with me, because if this succeeds or if this fails, I need to know that the responsibility rests on me. So then the other thing I said that we need to make happen is Joshua Werner, who a lot of people who've been to Astro and stuff like that, have seen Josh around and stuff like that. Super good dude, good friend of mine, one of the most talented people I've ever met in the industry. He helped create and found SourcePoint. He co-founded the company back in the day. And I said, I need you, Josh, to stay on as chief creative officer with me to help make sure this moves in the right direction, and so I can rely on your expertise. In March, I've been a comic book writer, published writer for 23 years, but I've never been a publisher.
That's great. Why is that?
I've liked, honestly, I like writing, and that's kind of where I wanted to focus. And being a publisher puts you in a whole different air. Even when we talk here about me being the publisher, it changes the dynamic of how you interact with people, or maybe more specifically, how they interact with you, right? I always joked around, I like being Batman to the Justice League. I got this cool thing. I'm going to bring in a cool book. I'm going to bring a cool book to your publisher. We're going to run it. We'll publish it. And then maybe I'll stick around or maybe I won't, and I've stuck around with SourcePoint for years now. I've been ride or die with them for about 7 years. But my focus has always been on writing, and whether it be for my creator-owned work or working with, people like Twisted or Lon Chaney's estate with Ron Chaney or Josh Mallerman or Tony Schiavone or Arn Anderson. Even when I dip into things like that aren't creator-owned for me, that's what I've enjoyed. But again, this opportunity came up where now I have the opportunity to take a lot of my expertise from over 20 years of doing this and help rebrand SourcePoint as what it once was, which was a very creator-centric, creator-friendly publisher. Okay. That's why I'm doing it. I'm not doing this because I want to be in charge of anything. I'm not, despite me saying I had to be the one the buck stopped with me. That's just for my own sanity and for me to be effective, right? I don't want to be a kingmaker. I don't want to be in a position where I'm having to tell people yes or no, right? I wanted to write. But again, I've been doing this 23 years, man, and I have a lot of I have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of ideas about how things can work for creators. I'm a writer, creator first, but that goes back to point 2. There's no substitute for experience, and Josh Werner had a lot of that. So when I realized that Josh could stay in with it, and he agreed to stay in with me on it, I realized I had the extra level of expertise to make this stuff possible, make a run at it, and just rebrand SourcePoint Press as to what it was originally. A creator focus, a creator driven publisher of comics with a sharp edge. And here we are. Our first set of books are now in Lunar, and they're going to be hitting stores in January.
What's your first order of business?
My first order of business was develop submission guidelines. If you go to sourcepointpress.com, I said my first order of business, and it was along with the rebranding the website and recreating a new website, was making submission guidelines for creators that were offensively transparent. I said, I want to lay it right out there. There is no question. Here's what we're doing. Here's what you'll get. Here's what you can expect. Here's what you shouldn't expect. Because there's so many publishers out there that play hide the ball on stuff. People that make comics are like musicians, man. We're sick. We do it because we have to.
Right.
And there's plenty of people out there who know how much we love to do it and can take advantage of that fact. So I put out submission guidelines and said, if you want to publish a book with SourcePoint, here's exactly what it's going to look like. Here's what it's going to entail. And just blatantly, just almost offensively, like I said, transparent. And then my second order of business, even though you didn't ask, I'll tell you because it ties in, was to put myself under the same contract I'd be offering everybody else, so that we're all on a level playing field, right? I can't give anyone a better deal than I am giving myself. But conversely, I can give people the best deal we have, which is the deal I give myself.
That's cool. I like that.
And
it makes everybody working at a high level too, because everybody's on sync. And
right. It's like you're not going to get a better deal than the guy that runs the company, right? We're on the exact same deal. I've had people ask me, well, how's SourcePoint Press going to make money? And I said, not to be cute about it, my goal in running the publisher is not for the publisher to make money. My goal is for the publisher to stay solvent so that creators can get their work out there. That's my goal. And maybe that sounds naive and foolish. Maybe a year from now, we'll be talking again and I'll say, man, I screwed the pooch on that one. Right. but it won't be for lack of trying. But I do believe the model we have set up will work. And the Source Point as a brand will really mean something. It'll mean comics with a sharp edge. It'll mean great comic books. It'll mean specifically great graphic novels. And hopefully, just by virtue of being on the brand, all the books will sell more. Everybody will make more money. The publisher will stay solvent, and this will remain open as an access point for people that want to do creator-owned books.
Go
ahead, Bash.
What's the direction that you're kind of looking at when it comes down to the some of the graphic novels that you guys are going to be coming up with?
Yeah, man. We are really looking to focus on graphic novels in the genres of horror, speculative fiction, and pulp. Right. That's kind of what brought us to the dance back in the day. That's kind of what I like anyway, and I think there's just a strong market for that. We're not looking to really get too far outside of that for the most part until creators have established themselves as creators in that realm. Then if you want to dip out, you can dip out a little bit, right? You know, so we have some creators that are doing some like really cool horror books and stuff like that. We got a creator that's done a couple of horror books with us, but then wants to do something a little bit out of pocket. They've established themselves. They've earned that, right? But if people come to us thinking that, oh, you know, a superhero book, I'm not in superhero books. I've even written one myself, but I wrote my superhero book 15 years in my career too, after I had a litany of horror books. And the book I write about a superhero is probably one of the scariest books I've written. But our focus as a brand is going to be on horror, graphic novels, science fiction, speculative fiction, graphic novels, and all those.
What are you most excited for coming up out of Source Press?
Oh, man. Before we even opened our submission guidelines to the public over at with Source Point Press, we had 40 graphic novels on tap. And that was just from people I know who I was able to talk to directly and said, look, here's the deal we're offering. I know the kind of stuff you do. Do you want to be able to get your books into Simon & Schuster and Lunar and things like that? Here's the terms of the deal. Here's what we're offering. And I think what I'm most excited about is almost every creator I talked to jumped at it. That's what excited me. The fact that people recognized and appreciated the model we're putting forward. It's not for everybody, right? The model we're putting forward is not for everybody. You got to kind of be at a certain level in your career, at a certain point in your career to be able to do what we're doing. But the creators who are kind of like roughly on my level, my peers in regards to the output and the way they approach the work, the fact that they saw what we're doing and said, yeah, that makes sense, let's roll, that excited me. And we got some really cool books lined up too as a result of that, and that really excites me as well.
Any plans of a biography? Putting out your own biography?
It'd be boring. No. I did a book called Right or Wrong, A Writer's Guide to Creating Comics, which is actually a book about writing for comics and things like that. There's a lot of biographical stuff in there. In fact, when I did a new second edition of the book, I actually included a lot of photos and stuff like that in the book, which I'm not very photogenic. Obviously, you know, people know my image as a guy in the top hat and the scarf. But there's a lot of autobiographical stuff in the new Right or Wrong, A Writer's Guide to Creating Comics second edition, including I included a new epilogue at the end of the book too, which is probably more personal than I've ever been writing before, about some just stuff in my life that happened between me writing that book and things like that. So that's probably the closest I'm going to get as Right or Wrong. There's just a lot of me in that book, and I talk a lot about my early career as a comic book creator. But other than that, I'm boring, man. I sit at a keyboard as much as I can, or I sit with a book in front of me as much as I can. I mean, it wouldn't, aside from like talking about creating comics and stuff like that. I mean, I guess even in Right or Wrong, I talk about my music journalism days a bit. I have thought, you know, it's funny, the more I'm thinking about this, I have thought about one day doing a book called Life on the Road and just talking about like all these crazy things that have happened on the road. But
hey, that could be interesting.
It could be, you know. I've talked in interviews over the years of how Twisted and I came together and how I actually knew of them back when they were House of Crazies and like telling stories like that, or how, meeting Josh Mallard.
And you worked with ICP before that, right?
I worked with ICP before that. Yep, exactly. So I don't know, maybe we'll see, I almost think that'd be better as like a book than a graphic novel, but I started this conversation by saying no. Now I'm gonna lean to a maybe.
And now you're gonna get ideas going through your head.
You're doing what Travis did. You're working me into another job I didn't want, right? Right? You're like, oh, yeah, meeting, rolling with ICP back in the day, and Korn and Marilyn Manson, Typo Negative, all that.
Typo would have been awesome.
Typo was the first big interview I ever did, and it was so cool because we went outside the tour bus for the interview. Back then, I couldn't even afford a tape recorder. I had literally had pencil and paper. I mean, I was broke as a joke at the time. And, Peter had a couple of people on the bus. They left the bus and he ushered me in. And the first thing I remember is he like shook my hand and his hand just like enveloped mine. Like, it's huge, dude. And there's a picture in the New Right or Wrong book. I don't think I have one here close to me. I do not. I got it on the other side of the office here. But there's a picture of me with Peter Steele from that night. That's back then when I had the long hair and stuff like that. And I come up to like here on him, right? It's like my head's as big as like his pec is like his pec. And even on the bus, he had to crouch the whole time getting back to the bus. And Peter Steele was so cool, man, because I'm sitting there like jotting notes down in our interview, right? It's not like we have now, we can do video recording stuff. I was in person, and he was just so nice and so gracious as I'm sitting there making notes. And I think he was kind of half messing with me. I'm not positive, but at one point he took out this big knife and he had a policeman's hat. And he was like cutting the band out of the hat with like this big like Bowie knife looking thing. And I'm sitting there like, oh, so tell me more about how the band got started. I'm like writing down notes because he's sitting there like, well, let me tell you. He uses like Brooklyn accent and these fangs and stuff. And he's, this cutting the rim out of this police hat so he could put it on for when he was on stage later.
That's awesome. You worked with George also, didn't you? Or was that a different department?
George Villegas?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, George. I'm looking right up here, right above where my camera is. Picture me and George from one of the early Astronomicons. George is a great dude. Not only is George the one I worked with to do the 2 volumes we did of Haunted Highons, but George Villegas is also the one responsible for hooking me up with Chain Entertainment, which led to the creation of the London After Midnight graphic novel. And if you're a horror fan, classic horror fan, you probably know this image right here. This graphic novel exists because of George. George got me in touch with Ron Chaney, and we were able to bring back this long lost horror film as a graphic novel. And George is even listed right inside the front cover as talent relations management. He's listed right in there. Bam. So yeah, George is a very good dude. I've got to work with George a lot, and he's just been so busy with so much stuff he's got going on right now, man. He's just popping off, and I'm so happy to see it because he's such a good dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Very humble and nice.
Yeah, very humble, very nice, very hardworking. Like I said, there's not many photos of me I keep around, but here I'll just hold on. I'll give you guys a little exclusive here. It's stuff that no one else sees. Here's a little picture of me and George and Mariana and Alessandro, who illustrated your Big Ben shirt. Yeah, there it is, from one of the earliest Astronomicons. And I keep this
wow.
my desk. Yeah. This is at the concert, and that just is just a little reminder. Sorry, here you
go.
Yeah. But there's the photo right there. Just a little Polaroid that just reminds me of those days. Keep that. It's just literally, I mean, you can see it's arm's length. It's right in front of me.
Yeah,
I'm very grateful for the opportunities George gave me, and just to have him in my circle, man. It's good dude.
yeah, it's crazy his looks over the years too, because I have like memories with pictures with him and stuff. And as it progressively gets older, he just huge change. Almost every pictures, he looks totally different.
He's like phases of the moon.
Yeah,
Right? You know, he had the samurai bun, then this, then that, but no, super good dude, man. I've really valued my personal professional relationship with him. And he's one of those guys, I may not see him in 6 months, talk to him in 6 months, we can pick up right where we left off because we're both as busy, man. And again, just the continued success he's had has been very, very well earned. Very well earned.
for sure. Now, getting off topic, but is there anything new that you're bringing aspect to Source Point Press?
Yeah, again, I think the biggest thing that I'm going to be doing with the publisher, and people can go to sourcepointpress.com, they can see our first lineup of books, but also our first number of creators. I really am trying to make SourcePoint a very creator-driven publisher. So when you look at our website, you'll see like the books in like a scroll across the front of the page. But past that, we list our books by creator. So I'm not going to list London After Midnight, and then Nightmare World, and then I'm not going to turn around and list. Here, I'm going to grab another one here, like Tales of Mystery. I'm going to say Dirk Manning. Here's his books. Joshua Ross. Here's his book. Dr. Christy Blanche. Here's her books. Corinne Roberts. Here's her books.
Basically
Thomas.
have a dictionary on everybody in the press.
What's that?
Basically like a dictionary of every person. Yeah.
Right. And then when you open their when you open their author picture, you click down, you get a drop down of all their books are. Right. That's what I'm more interested in doing, is I want us to be about the creators rather than the titles. When you go to a normal bookstore, oftentimes you're looking for what's the new book by Joe Hill, what's the new book by Harlan Ellison, what's the new book by Stephen King, right? And again, I'm talking to you in a room surrounded by a lot of books in here and stuff like that, and again, that's just kind of where we want to sit with it. I want you to know, oh, this is the new Joshua Ross book, this is the new Austin McKinley book, this is the new John Dexter book, right? What books does this person that created stuff I like, what are they connected to? And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm bringing to the publisher that's maybe a little bit of a change, is we really want to be creator driven rather than title driven.
You think that'll have a huge impact?
I'm hoping, man. I'm hoping because, again, let's take a guy like Joshua Ross as a perfect example. He was the illustrator on London After Midnight. He's done stuff in Tales of Mystery. He illustrated the book with Josh Malerman, who wrote Bird Box. But then when he puts out his own creator-owned book, even though it may be like a creative nonfiction memoir, I want people to know, oh God, I really loved his illustrations on these things. I'm going to give it a chance. Then when he does his book after that, Divinity Calls Shotgun, which is like this crazy, wild, like surreal road trip book, I want people to know that's the next Joshua Ross book. Z.M. Thomas did a book that we have coming out later this year called The Bible 2. And the cover is Jesus on a unicorn holding machine guns. It's ridiculous, right? It's crazy, but it's fun. And it's irreverent, but it's respectful. It's just this ridiculously hilarious book. You may have seen the meme of the cover. People don't even know it's actually based on his book. Well, his book after that is going to be a straight-up body horror book called The Biotic Crisis. You may not ever associate the Bible 2 and the Biotic Crisis as being the same guy, right? But I want people to see Z.M. Thomas. Here's his books, and that's one of them. So that's where I think that's going to make a real big impact. That's my hope anyway.
So I have a question for you. It might sound a little off kiltered, but it's not. Have you ever had a project that you kind of look back at and wish, hey, I wish I could have done this with it instead of the route that you went with one, or do you have something that you wish that you could have done differently?
That's a great question. I try to really focus on playing the cards that I'm dealt and being grateful for what I have. Um, I've said no to more things in my career than I've said yes to, and there's a couple times maybe I wish I would have said yes. Um, I was offered for my books to be on Comixology at the launch of Comixology. Oops, I said no. Right? Oops, maybe I'd be living on an island right now or something. Who knew? Instead, but there's been opportunities to turn the books into movies and things like that. I don't chase that opportunity as hard as I think a lot of people would. Um, I've had Steven Spielberg look at one of my books, right? Uh, there's part of me that's like, man, I should chase those opportunities harder. Um, but I've seen people fall down that rabbit hole of just trying to get their books turned into movies and then they're not making any more books. To me, if you want to make a movie based on my book, option it and go do it, and then invite me to the premiere. That's just where I sit. I know a lot of people romanticize having their book turned into a movie, and having your book turned into a movie can do huge things for your career, and I totally get that. I know writers that live off the options forever. They just keep re-optioning. Parts of me are like,
be a bad thing too.
What's that?
It could also be a bad thing too.
Well, they fall down that hole, and then they're just living off of that. I'm more interested in, I got into writing, and this kind of goes full circle what we talked about earlier, right? I got into writing because I want to write books. I want to create books. I want them to be out there. And I want them to exist. I didn't get into this to make movies. I got into this to make graphic novels. I got into this to make comics. That's what I love. That's what I'm interested in. But there's parts of me sometimes like, man, maybe I should have chased that one a little bit harder. But at the end of the day, anytime I'm spending chasing something is time I'm not spending making something. I think the one project that I really wish would have unfolded differently, right before Stan Lee passed, I was hired to adapt one of his old horror stories as a graphic novel. And when I got the contract from Stan Lee's people to do this and signed it, the first thing I did is I sent it to my folks. And I said, if the earth swallows me tomorrow, I want you to know today that your son signed a contract to do a book with Stan Lee. And it's about a quarter to a half written. And then what happened with Stan happened, the whole, I don't want to say kidnapping, but the whole rigmarole that happened at the end of his life. And he ended up passing. And the question then became, do we finish the book anyway? And Travis McIntyre at Source Point Press, who was going to put out the book, him and I talked about it. And he said, if we finish this project, we're going to look like we're exploiting not only a very beloved person in the comic industry and in the world of pop culture, but also we're exploiting him after he had some really shady things going on at the end of his life. Travis was right. Right. I didn't want to look like, oh, by the way, we know Stan Lee just had all those terrible things happen. They died. But here's his new horror book. Right.
Right. You don't want to be that guy.
I want to be that guy. But man, I wish that would have worked out a little bit differently at the same time, where maybe we all just could have paused for a year or something and maybe put it out as a sign of respect. But there were a lot of players involved and a lot of people had different agendas too. There were people that maybe would argue, well, you got to put it out right away and monopolize and take the momentum of the fact that he just passed. That's not the route we went. As a result, I never got to finish the Stan Lee horror graphic novel that he had. He had an idea for a couple old horror graphic novels, and it would have been a really cool thing to put that out. You
gonna finish it, you think, sometime? Maybe put your own twist on the end of it?
No,
No.
because to do that, I would be taking I'd be taking Stan's idea and trying to pass it off as my own. And two, that ship has sailed in regards to working with those people at that time. But it would have been really cool, man. But then again, I can't complain because I didn't get to do the Stan Lee book, but I was offered to do a Stan Lee book. I have a partially written Stan Lee graphic novel based on idea by Stan Lee, right? But at the same time, man, I got to work with Twisted on 2 graphic novels so far. I've got to work with the Cheney Entertainment and bring back London After Midnight. Again, this is going to be in comic stores in January now. I've got to work with Tony Schiavone. I've got to work with the Harp Twins. I got to work with Arn Anderson. I got to work with Josh Mallerman, who wrote Bird Box. I've got to do so many cool things. I tried to focus on the misses, right? Because that's the stuff that'll eat you up. And I try to just be very grateful for the opportunities I have had.
The ones you have taken definitely outshine the ones that you missed out on.
I appreciate that, man. And that's exactly it. It was my ego talking when it said, no, let's push the Stan Lee thing through. That was my ego talking, right? I'm like, no, that's not the right call, man. And I recentered myself pretty quickly, but there was that minute like, are you sure we don't want to maybe just do this real quick and just get it out? If like, no, I'm not going to monopolize on the fact that this icon just passed away. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about it for a minute. But ultimately, I think the judge of a person is not how they deal with temptation; it's how they reconcile it, right? And it was just a situation where I'm like, this is not the right thing. I'm going to back out. I'm going to pull back on this because this is not the right way to do this. It would have been cool. At least I know I still have the contract. It's proof, right? I got to check that box. So it was an honor to be nominated, right?
Just having that contract right there, that says it all. That's most people don't even get that.
Right.
There was something that I actually saw a few years ago, and it was on Pawn Stars. They actually had a signed copy of the original drawings of Spider-Man that had Stan Lee's signatures on them. And they actually had to go authenticate them. And this was right before Stan Lee passed away, and he was doing a signing, and he actually authenticated them right there on the show for them.
Right. And that's the thing, man. Like I said, it's an honor to be nominated, and to have that opportunity. And I don't get any extra validation from publishing the book as I did being offered the book, if that makes sense. I know, yeah. I don't mean to sound cocky, but I know I can write. I know the book would have been what it would have been. It would have been a Dirk Manning book based on a Stan Lee idea. Cool. Instead, now that we're here, it's more about me just taking all these experiences and paying that forward to other creators as well. And really focusing on not only my own work, which I know we'll be talking about my own work in a separate interview in a little bit, but just focusing on Source Point Press, right? I've been at this game 23 years, man. And now if I have this opportunity to do this and to use my expertise to help other creators get their books out there as well, my peers, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to focus on. And only once in a while do I look up at the sky and think, man, what if that book would have came out? Would that have changed the trajectory of my career? And maybe it would have. But then I wouldn't be here talking to you guys about Source Point Press, which is something that feeds my soul and my heart a lot more than having that book out would have, quite frankly.
As long as you're happy doing what you're doing in life, then it never feels like work. And that's what counts.
That's exactly it, man. That's exactly it. I'm so fortunate to be in this position. I kind of coming full circle, right? I never anticipated or pursued a job like this, but having it, I'm really excited and really happy about the things that we can now do with this to help other people. And every decision, good and bad, and every mistake I've made and every victory that I've had has led me to this moment. And once you come to terms with that, the fact that I've made personal mistakes, I've made professional mistakes, I've stumbled on things, I've you know, all those things though have led me here. And now, if I have this opportunity to help other creators get their books out there, get into Lunar, get into Amazon, and things like that, I'm not going to say it makes it all worth it, but I don't want to think about what if, because what if could have made it that I wouldn't be in the position I am now to help other people. And that's what's most important to me, paying it forward, helping other people out. That's very core to who I am as a person. And if I have this opportunity to do that now through SourcePoint Press, that's what I want to do.
What would the young you say if you went back and told the young you that you were going to be in this position later in life?
Never would have believed it, brother. Never would have believed it. I know we're going to get into a break point here, but I'll say this as we start to wrap this part up. The Dirk Manning avatar, right? The picture of the guy in the top hat and the scarf, I kind of alluded to this earlier, was inspired by this image of Lon Chaney from London After Midnight, right? 23 years later, I brought this lost film that hasn't been seen in 100 years to life as a graphic
Back to life, right?
If you would have told me that would be where I would be when I picked out that image of the guy with the top hat and the scarf, right? I never would have believed it. If you would have told me that even 5 or 6 years ago, when there was parts of my life and career that weren't that great, that I would now be in a position where I can help other creators get their work out there. I never would have believed it. When I started my first comic book, Nightmare World, man, if you would have told me that this book would go on to create this, huge omnibus collection and inspire so many other creators and still be a book that I sell at every signing I do, I sell copies of Nightmare World. And this book has been reprinted by more publishers than almost any other comic book in the world, right? Which is a weird flex, but still, I wouldn't have believed any of it. But if my younger self came to me and said, hey, this is where you're going to be later, but there's going to be a lot of heartache, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of work, a lot of pain. You're going to lose friendships, but you're going to gain friendships, right? You're going to be real proud at times. You're going to be really embarrassed at times. You're going to feel love. You're going to feel loss. To be in this position now, and I'll say this, and I'll close out on this right now. I would do it. I would do it. I would do it just to have this opportunity to pay it forward to so many other creators. And I know I would do it. Even if you laid out everything, even if you laid out all the good, the bad, the ugly, I would do it and said, yeah, you're not going to get the Stan Lee book, but you're going to get this. These things are going to happen, but you're going to get the, if I knew that these were the exact steps I had to take to get to this place again, brother, I would do it.
You follow the exact road, right?
Yeah, I would follow the exact road because now I'm an opportunity to help other people out. And tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Absolutely.
And that's that. That's that. Drop the mic. That's all I got to say about that. So
Pipe bomb.
Yeah, exactly. Looking up at a picture, my signed picture of CM Punk up there too when I met him, and that's it. That's the pipe bomb.
Boo.
Boom.
Let's go, Seth Rollins.
Yeah. No. Hey, he's a workhorse, man. I get that. That's cool, but nah.
He's an Iowa boy. I gotta somewhat root for him.
No, that's fair. Seth is a beast, man. Seth is a beast. I got